Well, check it out, y'all. We got what you need. We're all living in apartments, condos, vans. Well, dude, even you can have a studio in a box. Yes, we can help you with that right here at Blind Knowledge. We work on your budget, and we figure out your measurements. We'll get you the best sound for the best price. Let me know, 877-237-1143 or at blindknowledge.com. Yep.
Do you struggle with putting yourself first? Are you tired of feeling burnt out and overwhelmed from constantly putting the needs of others before your own? I have created a sacred space that will be available once a week for 10 weeks to learn, dive deep, and create your boundaries to boost your confidence and self-worthiness. Go to www.krista-luna.com and sign up for the Master Your Boundaries course starting in September 2023. And use the code PARANORMAL to get 30% off today on www.crysta-luna.com.
People are strange when you're a stranger. Faces look ugly when you're alone. Women seem wicked when you're unwanted. Streets are uneven when you're down.
Welcome everybody. Here we are. I'm back. This is like musical chairs of podcasting here anymore, right? So this week I am back. We are Global Strangeness, first of all. Everybody knows us by now. We've been around. Everyone loves us, all our faithful fans. So we are myself, Deborah, Jeremy, and Michael. We are missing Scott this week. And Bruce, we are saying sayonara. It's been fun having you on. Hopefully he comes back as a guest once in a while. But yeah, this is the crew for this week. So this week I got to pick the topic. And so I wanted to talk about everything divination and all the tools you use. And probably anybody who has listened at all knows that I'm really into meditating. I love all this stuff. I have tarot cards. I have all the stuff. I've got the crystal ball. I've got pendulums. I've got all the stuff. So I love this kind of stuff. So I don't know. What about you guys? Do you guys use any of these things? Do you?
I'll let Michael go first.
I'm fascinated by the Ouija board. And I did look up on Google. That is the correct pronunciation. It's Ouija. So pardon my flashing in and out. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, I'm super fascinated with the Ouija board. I think that's going to be so much fun to play with.
Nice. Well, yeah. We will forgive you for being a flasher. That's okay.
If it gets too annoying, I'll pop out and try to log back in. But in the meantime, here we are. Sorry, Jeremy.
It's all good, folks. You just gotta understand. He's fascinated with the Ouija board. He likes to mess with it. So the demons are trying to pull him out of the camera as much as possible. That's all it is. That's all it is. But
attempted demonic possession.
And no, I don't. I'll meditate now every night, and I have a money jar. But besides that, I never used to really buy any of this stuff. Like I used to always think this was. In the 90s, these were the people you saw in like that little small house / business on Main Street that no one ever went to. But nowadays, these things are becoming more of a regular thing. I've interviewed so many tarot card readers, diviners, like pick your freaking way. I interviewed them at one point. And I mean, they've made me believers. I've gotten readings done on my show live where it's just the stuff they pull and they figure out there's no way they're Googling that information on me. So yeah, there's it's things that you can't even Google really. So it's just I've been made a believer. I want to believe. And I mean, and Scott, you are not a tarot card reader yet. Start going to a school or something and learn how to do it. Actually, I have an academy you can go to. I just interviewed the headmaster, and he would love to have you. I'm sure. You can even learn the dark arts there, and sex magic, which we are definitely doing a freaking episode on eventually. And I'm bringing that guy on to talk. I'm bringing that guy and one of his teachers on to talk about it. Oh my God. I wanted to dig into it so much more on my show, but we're running low on time. But we're definitely doing a show about Scott's going to love it. Scott's going to love it. I already know. But
Yeah,
But-
that sounds interesting.
And that for those that missed it, this past Tuesday, or 2 Tuesdays ago, Scott was on Maniacal Music Musings, having a good old time as a guest. And that episode will be dropping this Friday, actually. So if you want to check it out, it'll be dropping on Friday. You can hear Scott get made fun of for saying that birds aren't real. So always fun. But anyway, Deborah, what do you want to bring to the table this week with this?
Well, I guess maybe we should first of all start with what is divination? Like, not everybody's familiar with what that even means. So the good old standard description of it is seek knowledge of the future or the unknown by supernatural means. And divination tools, so divination itself, you don't even need any of the stuff, even though the stuff is so much fun, the crystals and the tarot cards and all that stuff, great fun, but you don't actually need it. And I don't know, you guys have probably heard, some people will say they use their body almost like a pendulum. So say you're in a store and you're like, should I buy this or that? And they let their body, the energy in their body, like lean one way or the other. You figure out what's yes and no to you, just like you would with a pendulum. And so they use just their own body, or they get, vibrations in one leg, and it's kind of giving answers, your own body.
So Quagmire at a strip club. Got it.
So what? Jeez.
So I've got a question about I've got a question about that, Deborah, because I always wonder the same thing about the Ouija board. What or who moves the planchette? So what you're saying is that you're allowing your body, in a sense, to become the planchette. So who is moving the body as a planchette in one direction or the other? Who is telling you the yes or the no by moving your body as a pendulum?
So there's so many different ways to use all of these tools. So there's so many different things. So you can be experiencing your own energy, your own higher self, and that's kind of your own guidance. There's also angels and guides, and then there's spirits. And so you set the intention of who you talk to. And that's the whole thing. When you're doing a pendulum, like you're in a store and you're asking, that's your own intuition, that's your own higher self that you're getting guidance from. Okay. But when you're using a Ouija board, maybe you're wanting to speak to a specific spirit. And so this is where people say it's all demonic, but it's what you use the intention for. So the thing about Ouija's, everybody sits down and they're like, is anyone there? Is anybody there? And half of them are scared. And that's when you get lower vibrational things showing up saying, well, damn, yeah, I'll talk to you, but it's not who you want to talk to. You should have clear intentions when you sit down with anything. And you always want it to be high vibrational. So even the Ouija board, people say the board itself is just a tool. So you can use it to communicate however you want to as well, but you have to have the intention set. And that's true of all of the tools, and it's true of your own body. When you're channeling things coming through your own energy system, you're in control of it, but you have to be very intentional about who you're connecting with.
So how do you do that? How do you be careful about who you're connecting with? How do you control that?
So the biggest thing is, so Jeremy, you're saying you're starting to meditate. So when you first start meditating and you'll feel weird sensations. And if you're kind of empathic at all, it's very strange. Sometimes, when you walk into a crowd and you can feel other people's energy and their anger, or if they're physically hurt, you can kind of pick up on it. So there's when you figure out what that feels like when it's another human. And then when you get really sensitive, you start figuring out when it's a spirit versus an angel. It's all different vibrations, but it is very confusing at first. What's yours? What's someone else's? What's, spirit world? It's confusing. So that's where meditating is really, really, really important. You really clear your mind, you get really quiet, and you let it come in and you start to learn what's what. So it's not like an overnight process, at least in my experience.
It's really not. It's really not. I mean, I can, when my Reiki master / life coach does a Reiki session with me, like you can feel it. Like the first time, I literally almost jumped on my chair because I'm like, what the fuck is that? And it's like you could feel it throughout your body. Like wherever she says it's going, you feel it like a second before she says it. It's just like, holy shit.
What's so interesting is it's so actually physical. like it's so weird. It isn't like a physical feeling, right? It's so that always weirded me out so much that it's not just kind of your mind thinking about stuff. It is physical. The energy is actually moving. It's so interesting to me, but yeah.
It is. And see, this is one of my many guests who talked about tarot Ouija boards. Actually, when he was a child, Damon Manx, he's an author now, a horror author, like a horror author, paranormal author. He's actually really good. Read a few of his online stuff. But when he was a young teenager, I'll say, these two girls that lived down the road from him that were sisters and were kind of creepy, his words. He went over to their house and they played with a Ouija board. And basically the girls told him, you're going to die at this age. I don't remember the freaking age for anything. But when he got to that age, he had a heart attack that usually kills people. He basically had like a widowmaker. He survived it, but just the coincidence in that is just too much. When someone tells you you're going to die at this age, and then 20 years later you have a heart attack at that age, and like you could have died if doctors weren't as good as they are nowadays with that stuff. But it's just.
And I think too, like people get really stuck on predictions, and predictions are, they're cool when somebody's kind of giving you a reading, like a tarot reader or a medium or whoever is giving you a reading about prediction, like future things happening in your life. People have to remember too, like timelines change and stuff. So they're picking up on the energy where you're at right now and the most likely outcome if you're staying on the path you're on right now. But we all have free will. You can change things, so you can actually change your timeline. So it's not set in stone anyways. So it's really, nobody can say like 1000% this is going to happen, because the person who's getting read might go through a spiritual awakening, might change their whole kind of energetic, imprint themselves, and it can change.
Technically, if you get a reading of some kind done every day, it should always be different every day, because you're always changing your future bit by bit. Worse or better, it's going to change some way though.
For me, the whole thing is like you do a reading each day, like I'll pull a card or whatever just to get sort of on this one situation. You get a reading on that situation, and then you have information and you can make a decision one way or the other based on that. So it's not, it's not set in stone. It's to let's sort of guide you. That's how I use it and see it.
Yeah, I don't do readings myself personally, but I've gotten enough of them in a row that I had different shows that just eventually it's just you see the differences in them like slightly, and it's just like, what did I do in the last day that made this change? And it's it throws you for a loop in your head for a while, because it's just you try to figure out like where something changed and you never can figure it out. It's just little bit of things happen in your life. You talk to a person that day that you originally weren't going to talk to, or something like that. Like it's just small changes that everybody does every day. They don't realize the impact. Butterfly effect. The butterfly effect, in a way. You step on a butterfly in the past, it changes the future.
Right. So, Michael, have you ever had like a medium reading or a?
Yeah, we had a tarot reader over to the house, and she conducted a couple readings. I thought it was interesting. During my second reading, she became really uncomfortable, and she seemed like she didn't want to talk anymore. So, of course, I took that as a bad sign for my future. She wouldn't want to fess up to it. But, yeah, I'm really fascinated by what you two are saying, because there are some implications here. One implication is fate, right? So the guy who had a heart attack 20 years later, it's almost as if the medium or the Ouija board was able to read his fate and ascertain that in 20 years, this outcome was certain. But then you were also saying that, well, depending on what you've done over the past few days, maybe those predictions will change. So then I wonder if there's a multitude of fates that any individual person can actually manifest in the future that are, obviously different from the same quantity or type of fates that another person would have. Like the same reading for Deborah would probably not be the reading that I would get, right? We would get different readings. And
if you're going to a legit person, I was going to say that, because I've discussed this on my show with multiple guests. there are good and there are bad of everything. Tarot readers, psychics, mediums. There's always going to be the sham artist out there trying to make.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Just disclaimer there, folks. Always be careful who you go to. Get reviews first. Get reputation.
And I'm such a big believer, like, you know, there's professionals that make money, and obviously they've been doing it a long time, so they're very good. But we all can do this. Like we all have connection. We all have, you know, our higher self. We all have guides. We are all 1000% capable and should be doing this all the time. It's, you know, it was really
why should we be doing it? Why should we be doing it all the time, Deborah?
I just think it improves your ability to regulate your emotions and make informed decisions and have the comfort, you know, it's like a comfort knowing you have a whole team that you can work with.
Okay.
In your life. Like I don't know, Jeremy, I don't know how you feel, but when I started meditating, you're like clearing off old blocks of energy and negative traumas and stuff. You hold this stuff in your body and it will actually make you sick. And so if you can clear all of that off and it's just, it improves your life. Like I can't even tell you 1,000 times better. Because when something comes up and it is a challenge, you're able to clear it off. You understand whether it's a negative entity or if it's yourself, what it is, and you can clear it off then. You understand what you're dealing with. And you also understand other people if they're lying to you and stuff. So, yeah.
Put it this way, Deborah. The first time that my Reiki master did a full chakra cleansing on me, by the time she got done, she was in fucking tears because of all the dark energy she pulled out of me. Like it was like she seemed exhausted when she got done, and she was like, "That was something." But
it's exhausting.
I mean, I never had anything like that done in my life. So then she probably had a good 35 years of pulling to do of all that dark energy. So, that would have ride. I mean, but
then you feel lighter. Like, did you feel like, oh my gosh, I
went to take the dogs out and I got down there that day, and I freaking felt like I was walking on air. Like I was walking on the grass and it feels like I'm walking on air. I'm like, what the? Like it was almost like.
And so the whole thing is like, if you didn't get into this and you didn't know, then you're walking around with that, like you're walking around all negative and it's piling on. So you don't even know. But when you start to do these practices and meditating and all this stuff, your quality of life improves because you start feeling better and better and more positive, and positivity, like negativity, ripples out, right? So you affect everybody around you too.
Once you get through the chaos of a spiritual awakening, that is, because spiritual awakenings are pure motherfucking chaos for months.
It is. It's crazy. Yeah.
But on the other side of that question that Michael asked, though, Deborah, I'll play devil's advocate here. Yeah, it's good to have a team like that to look into all your spiritual side to see what you should be doing in life. But if you get too into it, that's when, as Iron Man said, can I play with madness? Because that's basically what you're doing, is you're playing with madness at that point, because it's like being an addict to some people at a certain point. Like they have to I've had people that come to my show night after night asking the person on, oh, do you do readings? Can I have a reading? And I'm just like, I've had to block some of these people because they just get so like they're addicted to it. Like every night it's just asking my guests, and I'm like, they're an author. No, they don't do readings. They're a paranormal investigator. They don't do readings.
That's where people need to learn how to develop their own. It's not outside you. Yeah, other people can do readings for you, but it's really important that you develop your own. And it's also important, we're spiritual beings, but we're here on Earth to enjoy Earth and do Earth things, right? Like we're in this world. You may as well enjoy this world.
That's the thing, though. I mean, like it's not even about like it's at that point in time like they want readings. It's just they want someone to talk about them so they can just blab about their problems for a good 15 minutes.
They don't want to pay for talk therapy, so they're just
because every freaking thing the psychic says, you get 3 comments in the comment list from that person, like that are paragraphs long. Like, oh my god, when this happened, this and this happened then, and it's like, dude, I'm not putting these up on the screen. No, some of these are horrible. I've had some ones to show up. I'm like, oh fuck. Okay, you're getting blocked. Like it's just like
a lot of people too, like they're really negative. They're like, my milk was bad when I poured it in my coffee. Is there a negative entity around me? It's like, oh my gosh. Like, no,
your refrigerator
things can happen.
So, well, this explains why the psychic industry is a $2 billion a year business.
Yeah, right. That's it. And Jeremy's right. There's a lot of good ones, and then there's a lot of people they're making bucks and they're preying on people like that. I mean, you see on Facebook sometimes too. There'll be a message and they'll be like, "Oh, there's a curse on you, and I can remove it if you pay me." It's like a real psychic isn't doing that. Like going around
that's not even the best scam out there. On Instagram, you'll get messages from random psychics.
Okay.
Oh, the fates told me I should give you a reading today. Can you just pay $3 for the reading? No, I can't. No, if you want to give me, I straight up say to them, like, if you want to give me a reading, you're doing it for free. If the fates really want you to give me a reading, you're going to do it for free.
Yeah.
It's like the fates are like, the fates just told me there's a concert coming up that I don't have enough money for, so I need to buy tickets. So can you yeah.
I mean, it's equivalent to a freaking OnlyFans girl sending you nudes in your DMs and being like, "Oh, I sent you them. Can you pay me now?" Like, it's the same thing. Like, it's just what? Like, no, I would have came to you if I was interested. I don't need you to come to me. Like, it's just I've blocked so many people on Instagram because the freaking mediums wanted me to like pay for readings all of a sudden.
Yeah,
because their cards told them that they had talked to me.
Don't put energy into that at all. Just don't even. I just ignore all of that kind of crazy. Like, it's nuts. So. But
so
I guess
Deborah, how do you? I'm sorry for interrupting. How do you tie what you're talking about now with the remote viewing that you've participated in? Is there a continuum here? Is there some overlap in these realms? How do you explain that?
So it's all different. So we all have, there's, different abilities. And some people are naturally strong, and so about the clairs. Most people know clairvoyant, clairaudient, sentient, all those, right?
Sentient.
So,
and that, what is for the audience? What does clairsentient mean?
Clairsentient, I think that's the one where you're tasting or smelling, isn't it? And then clairvoyant is vision. Clairaudient is you're hearing things.
Okay.
And then there's claircognizance, where you just know things. Like, it's kind of, have you ever had where something just comes to you and it's like you just know it? You don't know why, but like, you know it.
It's claircognizant.
Cognizant.
What she just fucking said. Like, that's where deja vu falls into that. Like, deja vu and synchronicity falls into that category a lot of times.
So clairsentience is the ability to use the five senses.
Well, like, it's not your regular vision. It's not your regular, but you'll taste. Like, have you ever walked into a room or whatever and you smell, say, your grandma's perfume, or a really strong scent of something, and it's not there. There's no flowers, there's no anything, but the scent is there. And you sort of have a feeling of knowing they're there. That's when you can smell something, or if you can taste something, like a really strong taste, but you haven't taken a taste of that. So
right. So we see that kind of activity on like paranormal shows where the investigator will say, "Well, I smell perfume," or "I smell cigars." Mm-hmm. So you're saying that clairsentience.
Cigars comes up a lot with people who sense spirits in their, if they're sensing like their grandparents or great grandparents. Like, cigars come up a lot. I've had multiple people tell me they smell cigars, and of course, perfume cologne is a big thing too. Can't tell you how many people said, "Oh, I knew it was my grandfather because I smelled Old Spice and Bengay."
Yeah, Old Spice. Yeah.
So the thing about remote viewing, you were talking about, asking about that. So I am very visual, and I do have really strong clairvoyance. So, but it is something that's another thing anyone can learn, and it's you should actually take it, Michael. I'm sure you'd really, really enjoy that. Of course,
I'd like to get recruited by the CIA, so I should try this.
Well, it's just really interesting because it's very structured. Like, I went into it because I kind of went through a spiritual awakening. So I had these visions happening, all this kind of stuff kind of happening. And I took that because I was like, I need to control it, because it was just really fast and I didn't know what was what. And I thought I could learn how to direct and control it or whatever. And when I signed up, I was like, what kind of people are going to be in this class? But there was like psychologists, there was, like I said, a police detective from New York. It was like really interesting, and these people are legit. I mean, they get hired by the governments, they get hired by police, to help in missing persons cases and things like that. So it's a legit skill, and it's very like you have to submit what you're doing each time, and they mark you whether you're what your targets are, and if you're hitting targets and what you're strong in, and so it's provable, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And it's very methodical how they do it. So that was really interesting. But I got into that because I was having visions anyways. But it was just kind of all these weird flashes. I'd see some people, and I'm like, well, what the hell was that? I don't know what's going on. But at the same time, I was picking up, like I was going through the dark night of the soul. So all this crazy stuff was happening. All this energy stuff was very confusing. And I was just trying to navigate my way through it all. So. And
before I forget this, Michael, what you asked earlier about like how he was kind of destined to have the heart attack, like it was
right.
I hate to keep comparing this to time travel, but they are very similar. With fate, I mean, basically there are just same as time. There's fixed points, things that are always going to happen in your life, in the world, no matter what. Like these things are always going to be, and no matter how much you go back and try to change them, or no matter how much you try to predict the future to change them, certain things are never going to change because the fates just think it's too important too important an event to not happen. I mean, I don't know what the fates are, but I picture the three old ladies in Greek mythology cutting the threads like in Hercules. Like that's what I picture when I think of fates.
Yeah, well, I think we sign up for certain lessons because to me, school, like Earth is like a school for us to expand our awareness and our consciousness. And so we sign up for certain lessons. So you can't just bypass it because that's what you came here to learn and grow past if you can. And if you don't learn your lessons, you come back. That's why you keep reincarnating. That's what I do.
Oh, but that's dead on what I've been told by multiple people who are starseeds and are into all this spiritual extraterrestrial type thing. I mean, if we really are just like, I hate to say this, like Scientology believes, just alien spirits in human bodies. That's about as far as I'll go with Scientology, but I mean, we're basically just going back up to some waiting room in the sky, or we're going up to some, basically, it's like a DMV waiting room in the sky. That's what I like to call it. And you have to keep going back until you complete what you're meant to do. And I mean, there might be some greater plane you go to if you complete everything you're supposed to do, but it takes generations and lifetimes of living over and over again till you get that goal. I mean, and from what I've been told, you don't always come back as the same species. You come back as different species for different reasons.
I also believe that, yeah.
So,
well, I mean, that's utterly terrifying. First of all, let me say that the U.S. government has spent $20 million minimally on remote viewing. So obviously they take it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
But, okay, so if you're going to believe in reincarnation, and I don't have an opinion one way or another, so say, for example, a woman gives birth to a human, that human is growing a soul, that human dies in the same manner, gives birth to the soul. But the idea of reincarnation is terrifying because what if, just like in the savannas of Africa, as you emerge as a brand new baby soul in this other world, that there are hyenas and jackals just waiting to pounce upon you and tear you asunder? I mean, the whole thing's terrifying.
Well, is that any different from coming back a human?
It really? Is not. It really isn't.
There are plenty of humans that are waiting to take you down. Trust me, I could tell you from recent events. But
and it really, so it begs to people always say, well, why would anyone then come back as a murder victim, or because some people have some pretty terrible lives, and there doesn't seem a lot of rhyme or reason.
Yeah, I don't want to come back as that nutty putty guy.
But sometimes you're coming back and you're a lesson for people around you, and you've agreed to do this. And
I mean,
all the pain and all the hurt and all the darkness, that's human. So as soon as our spirit doesn't feel that, right? So you might sign up for something like that because you've agreed to play that role to teach people around you or whoever, whatever the reason is, to help them expand their growth.
I mean, think about the poor spirits that came back as Joan of Arc, or the poor spirits that came back as the Salem witches. Like, Jesus, like your life is not going to be good after about 20, 30 years. Like you're not going to have a good life. It's just going to be hell after hell after hell. And it's just.
But the thing is, the more, if you go through something terrible, like think about even when have a goal or whatever, like the harder you have to work at it, the more you learn, the more you expand. So I think that's the same for like kind of life lessons. We come here and if we can master a really hard thing, then we expand all the much, because everything is love in the end. That's the whole lesson at the end. So you have the potential to learn bigger lessons if you've gone through some hardships. So
exactly. I mean, yeah, it's multiple lives, just learning lessons over. I forget what the hell show it is, but they kept coming back, and like in one life they get hit by a car, so the next life they try to avoid the car, and like a horse runs them over. Like it's just like it's Murphy's law that if you try to avoid the inevitable, that something else is going to happen.
It does make sense, reincarnation, when you think about, like, I have a terrible fear of heights, and I've never fallen off anything. I don't, like, there's no reason for it, but I have a real fear of it. So that kind of does, give some credence to that as well. Like when you have unexplainable reactions to things that you shouldn't even know about, but you do.
Yeah,
maybe that's a life.
I might push back on that a little bit, because I've got the same fear. And it's very possible, Deborah, that something happened in your childhood that you don't even remember that involved falling.
Yeah, that is true. It could be a repressed memory, period.
I know as a child, I fell off a swing when it was at its highest point. I don't remember that. My parents told me it happened. But I have a fear of heights. I do not like the sensation of falling. So are those things related?
Yeah, and I mean, definitely there can be a correlation there. And I've always kind of chalked it up to, I'm short too, so I'm not used to seeing things from up.
Right, no, I get that.
Yeah.
I also think part of it is our insecurities with managing our own physicality. Are you limber enough to manage yourself in a precarious situation? Is your limbic system, that of a gymnast or somebody that's in the IT field and sits at a desk all day like me?
Yeah. And then also you have to think, if you had sort of a tumultuous childhood, your whole like fight or flight kind of system is always,
it's always on.
It's always on, a little bit higher alert than other people. And also TV, ads, whatever. Like we do absorb that, especially if we were watching stuff like that when we were young. So, I mean, it's a culmination of all this stuff, I think.
It is. I mean, and it's past lives too. I mean, and that's another huge part of divination, is it dives into past life regression, and people who I just had on someone the other day who is a human design specialist, and she basically does human design reads. Actually, she's going to come back on my show in December to do a full one on me for an episode. But it's interesting. Human design and past lives kind of tie into each other too, but human design is more about figuring out where you are currently in the future. I mean, obviously past lives are the opposite, but they kind of do. You can't know who you are and what you're going to be unless you know where you came from, basically.
I think there's so many different studies. Like that's interesting that somebody does that as their work. Like, I guess we should talk about like the different types of divination tools, like the tarot cards.
Oh, before you do that, I've got another question.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so when you are remote viewing, are you basically using somebody else's eyes to see something, or is this more like astral projection?
So it's different than, so I thought, I was really confused about that at first too, because astral projection, you're actually energetically leaving, going to a location. And I thought this was interesting because I was like, it must just be the same thing. Not. And the thing about astral projection is they can't use them when they're trying to, like, say, get information on another country's like fighter planes or whatever, like trying to get intel kind of thing like that, because it can be detected. Animals will see an astral projector, like the energetic body, they will trigger. Whereas remote viewing, you're seeing it. It's like a vision from, you're still in your own body. It's your own eyes, but you're kind of almost bilocating. You're not actually, your whole energetic body's not there. You're seeing it.
Okay, because what I was trying to get at is, I mean, if you can use remote viewing to assess, say, wartime capabilities of an enemy combatant, why can't you use remote viewing to see what's on the other side of death?
Different planes.
Different dimensions and stuff. And people do, though. People, more or less, I think that comes more with astral projecting, though, going and interacting with different dimensions and communicating that way.
I mean,
but remote viewing, you can remote view, basically wherever and whatever you want when you get really good at it. The thing is, it's really hard to say whether it's true or not. If I'm like, okay, I'm remote viewing, the backside of Mars or something. How do I prove that? I might see something. So it's good to practice that's why you have to like do it in a way where you can, check what you're actually viewing and see if it's correct. If you understand what I mean. If you have a 90%, average or whatever, then, you're probably, correct when you're viewing things, the crazy stuff.
And that's where remote viewing is different from astral projection, because I talked to an astral projector, Vincent Field, and he wrote a book about it too, about astral projection and not sleepwalking,
lucid dreaming.
Lucid dreaming, yeah, thank you. And basically when he lucid dreams and astral projects at the same time, basically. And he's been to so many different dimensions, and some of them are terrifying. Some of them are very warm and welcoming, but some of them have creatures that you would never want to meet in your wildest nightmares. And some of them have creatures that are cute and cuddly looking almost. But he said, I've been to 40, 50 other planes, and he said, I've yet to find the one where that is supposed to be after death. I have not yet, because when you get to that place, I'm sure you can feel it if you're projecting. You could feel that place is like darkness and just despair. I mean, or I guess bliss if there's a freaking heaven or something. But I mean, I don't know. It's just, that's why the whole reincarnation, extraterrestrial spirit type thing makes sense, because it'd be too far away for us to even project to. Like, it'd just be way, way, way away. And only your spirit would know how to get there.
Yeah, and AP, that's really interesting to me. And I think we do it while we sleep. In fact, I'm quite sure. And I've managed to get out of my body, but it's like, I'd like to do it from waking state. And I've only ever kind of done that once. But as soon as you're kind of out and looking around from the top or whatever, you slam back down. Because as soon as you're like, oh my gosh, you slam back in. You have to really practice at that. But I thought it was really interesting, because people are like, why don't you go to the Vatican then and dig through whatever? But there's astral projectors as bodyguards there that keep you away. So I was like, well, that's really interesting. People have been doing this for a long, long time, and some people are very, very good at it. And I thought that was really interesting that they have security in that realm as well for nosy people, like say just me. If I figured out how to get there, you can't just go do everything unless you're strong enough or, stronger than them. And they've been doing it a long time is what
you just blew my mind. That is such a cool concept.
Yeah, well, I mean, think about it. The governments, like you said, they've spent tons of money on this stuff. So they're way ahead of us. This is just like Jeremy was saying, it's becoming more and more normal. People are talking about it. People are kind of diving in because we've been taught to fear it all. We've been taught it's evil, it's against the church, it's against, and also we're so stressed out with all the, chaos in the world and distracted by stuff. You have to have a, really strong kind of sense of peaceful mind to do all of this stuff. So they're way ahead of us.
and since Captain Scott ain't here right now, I will say that, the Montauk Project, MK Ultra, all that was early starts of getting to this eventually. All that was the beginning of them trying to use people with the capability, and by drugging them and trying to make them bounce further, it's just what the government. It's the government. If they think something exists, they're going to have some people to look over it. Men in Black, Bigfoot catchers, basically, or handlers, I guess be the better word. There's, for everything we believe may exist, there's already a government agency trying to control it. Trying to figure out how to use it to their benefit, of course. Yeah. And many different governments, not just the US or Canada, or, it's everybody. They're all doing it, right? Trying to be the first to master it. China and Russia are the freaking kings of that, yeah. The Russians were doing things before we ever were. And I mean,
Yeah.
even the Germans, if you go back to World War II, I mean,
And again, this is really big. Why I think we, like regular people, everybody needs to do this. That's another reason, is just for openness. Like you can't be lied to if you can see just as clearly as everybody else the truth, right? Which is, 100% why they don't want everyone to do it. Why the churches squash it down,
mm-hmm.
and governments and everybody else.
I mean, the religious institutions have been squashing this down since the beginning of time. That's just the way it goes. I mean, anybody that was a freedom thinker was getting pushed down, and if they didn't quiet down, they got taken care of.
Yeah, because I mean, you can't control the narrative if people can see for themselves the absolute truth, or So it is it's just so fascinating to me. I really, over COVID, I really went down the rabbit hole of taking classes and digging into how to do all these different things, and my latest thing is actually I bought a telescope, and I'm going to start learning about astronomy and astrology as well, because those two things coinciding together. And I don't know, I'm such a nerd anyways. I'm just a big nerd.
Hey, astrology ain't nothing to joke with. I've had plenty of them on my show, and I've gotten readings, and they're another thing that's so freaking accurate. You can't deny
so
them.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, Deborah. Good luck with that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Seriously,
So
I have an academy you might want to go to, Deborah. Just saying.
Yeah, possibly. Like I literally just got the telescope and the this little guidebook on astronomy, and I'm gonna start doing little nights, out looking at the stars. And I have a book on how to read astrology, how to read from your birth date and whatever, how to sort of put that together. So I don't know. I like learning. I'm a very curious kind of person, so I get into all this stuff.
Well, speaking of other ways of divining.
Mm-hmm.
I have 10 of the weirdest fortune-telling divining methods from history. And some of these are normal and I've heard of them, but some of these I've never fucking heard of, and they are funny as hell. So we're going to have some fun with these, and I'm sorry Scott has to miss these, but he can watch it in replay. I tagged him in it. But the first one is, of course, augury, divination by birds. Especially.
I'm sorry, could you pronounce that again? What is it?
Augury.
Augury. Divination by birds.
Yep. Because chickens actually were the most popular ones. They used to use them to predict the outcome of battles. And priests would scatter grain in front of specifically raised chickens, of course. And whichever the birds ate the most out of, whatever pile the birds ate the most out of, would correspond to the degree of success that the Roman forces would enjoy that day. It worked really well only during one battle, really, and that was the First Punic War with Carthage. They basically consulted the chickens on what the Navy should do, and the chickens thought it would be a good day to attack the Carthaginian fleet, and apparently it worked. But the battle plan that he wanted to use at the same time, the chickens wouldn't eat the battle plan pile, so the captain had the chickens thrown overboard, saying if they won't eat, let them drink. And he ordered his ships into battle, and he suffered a crushing defeat. So he was recalled to Rome and put on trial, not for losing the battle, but for the sacrilege of killing the sacred chickens. He was sentenced to exile and died afterwards. God, I love it.
Take that seriously.
I mean, the Romans, the ancient civilizations believed in this type of stuff. They lived by it, but I mean, the old gods, that's what they were all about. I mean, I never fucking think of it. You saved me this last week, Michael. It's the freaking three ladies in Greece. I can't think of the name of ever. The oracles of Delphi. Yeah, there we go. Okay. like all that stuff. They lived by that stuff back then. But this next one I've heard of as well, but osteomancy, divination by bones.
Okay.
And I mean, of course, this was one of the places this was big, among others, is the Zulu nation of Africa, which uses the patterns of scattered bones to tell fortunes. In ancient China, questions were carved or painted on the bones or turtle shells, which were then heated until they cracked. The seer interpreted the pattern and size of the cracks to find the answer. And the early inhabitants of Scotland used a version of osteomancy called, I'm going to fuck this up, but Sliniac Slinianchid. I don't fucking know. In which the shoulder bone of a cooked animal was consulted. But first, the querent faced a challenge. They had to pick all the animal's flesh away from the bones without ever touching the bone with iron, aka fork or knife. So how do you do that? I don't know. How do you get all the animal's flesh away without using iron?
Leave it outside for birds to peck it away for a bit. I don't know. Boil it? Can you boil it, or does that change it?
I have a feeling I'm thinking they had to use like their fingers or something, or they had to clear it all away with their fingers, like every little last piece of flesh. But it seems like it would take a while on some if they use a cow or something. But the next one, this one's kind of funny. Alphidomancy, divination by bread. It was an ancient world thing. It's how they would solve crimes. Suspects would be rounded up, and each would be fed a piece of blessed bread or cake made with barley. To the innocent, it was just a snack, but the guilty party would be beset with stomach pains, indigestion, or simply choking. Sounds to me like they had a barley allergy, but okay. And even the parties who thought the cake tasted bad were considered guilty. They believe nowadays that it was more likely the bread was selectively poisoned, so that whoever the judge needed to be guilty would get sick.
Yeah, that sounds highly plausible, Jeremy, actually.
So you go in there and you pretend that's the best cake you've ever had in your whole life, no matter what you're feeling.
Yeah, pretend it's the best cake you ever had, then go home and shit your brains out. That's the way you do it. This one, though, before my surgery, this would have been my thing. Gastromancy. Divination by stomach rumbles. Which is basically the fortune telling based on the sounds and signs of the belly. The sounds of digestion were thought to be the voices of the dead and were interpreted by the seer in a kind of possession experience. Some scholars believe that the seers who translated or sneakily created these noises were the forerunners of modern ventriloquists. A writer during the Renaissance recorded that this method was for a long time together used in Ferrara by Lady Giacomo Rodogina, what the fuck were these words? The Eugastrimiathian prophetess. Later, gastromancy came to mean divination with around belly-shaped objects like water goblets or crystal balls, which are still used today, of course.
Okay, that one's strange and nonsensical.
Yeah, and how did that transition from your belly, like rumblings, to a crystal ball? Like that's
yeah.
Well, it just basically it was belly-shaped objects. That's basically why they were able to do it. And this next one I've heard of, and it's not too strange, I guess, because it makes sense in a way. But it's Margaridomancy, divination by pearls.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Which, it's the name sounds like it's something to do with the occult wisdom found at the bottom of a fishbowl margarita, which that's great wisdom, let me tell you. But it's really an ancient method of divination based on heating a pearl until it jumps or shatters. The ancients thought pearls were magical. They are the only gems produced by living beings. They didn't get to do this very often, though, because it was still expensive back then to buy pearls. A common method was to place a pearl in a cast iron pot, which was set over a fire. Then the diviner read aloud a list of names of people suspected of thievery. The person whose name was being read when the pearl began to move was the guilty party. Another version claims that the heated pearl would only begin to move when a guilty person came near it. So basically, you're playing hot potato with a freaking pearl and deciding people's fates.
Right? Spin the bottle. You to the gallows. Here we go.
Horrible.
Wow.
Horrible.
Here we go to some of the ancient Mesoamerican tribes. Anthropomancy, divination by human sacrifice. Also called antinopomancy. Experts have found evidence of it in nearly every corner of the world. It was seen as a way to appease the gods, but it also was a way to get answers from them, they thought. The practice was linked to and often include ectospicy, studying the organs of animal and human sacrifices. Anthropomancy was more concerned with the moment of death. Predictions were made based upon death throes, number and volume of screams, direction of blood flow, or the direction in which the victim's body fell to the floor. One of the most famous predictions in Western history was the result of this form of fortune telling. According to the Roman writer Suetonius, the seer Spurina performed anthropomancy before she warned Julius Caesar to beware the Ides of March. And he didn't listen to that, and he should have. So
how do they pick the victim? Like draw straws?
I'm guessing someone sitting in prison or sitting as a captive. I mean, it's the same thing as like when they used to cut chickens' heads off, and like they would like wherever the chicken landed on, like when it finally dropped, would be what they believed.
It's horrible.
It is. But speaking of something that's probably gonna be horrible, myomancy, divination by mouse. Myomancy was based on the movements of mice in a defined area or by the sound of their squeaks. Having your doom pronounced in the high-pitched voice of a tiny mouse sounds adorable, but the ancients took it seriously. Mice gnawing at treasures in a Roman temple were thought to predict the First Roman Civil War, and the dictator Fabius Maximus, I like that name, retired early after the squeak of a mouse predicted his doom.
So that actually makes maybe a stretch, but that makes a bit of sense to me. That like maybe not, going into wars and stuff, but animals are so, like say an earthquake is coming, and they're all trying to scurry out, or the air quality is bad, so they're trying to, so I could see how they watch the behavior of mice and be like, oh, something's coming. I can kind of see that. Maybe not to the degree they were doing it, but if you watch animal behavior, it is telling, right? When natural disasters are coming and stuff like that, they sense it a lot faster than us.
Exactly. I mean, so that one actually doesn't. That one's not as horrible as I thought it would be. I mean, but this one I can see
a little bit more sense.
Well, this one I can see Deborah doing.
Oh.
Dactylomancy, divination by jeweled rings.
Oh, I'm down.
But the most popular form of it comes from the Middle Ages in Europe. It required a set of 7 rings, like the Mandalorian, and I mean not the Mandalorian, the Mandalorian. I think that's the right name. Yeah, it is. Star Wars makes me think it's not real. Damn. Each was made of a different material that corresponded to a different day of the week. No one really knows how the rings were used, but they believe that the correct ring was rolled across or suspended above a table marked with the letters of the alphabet. The letters touched by the ring were seen as part of a message, which sounds very similar to a Ouija board, honestly. But today, modern seers perform a simple form of dactylomancy through dowsing by using a plain ring or other small objects suspended from a string. Answers are gained based on the direction in which the ring starts swinging. So basically a pendulum. It was a Ouija board once, and it became a pendulum. Am I off on that? Or
no, and even now people use pendulums with Ouija boards often, or they'll use it with numbered boards or whatever. They kind of use it together sometimes.
Makes sense.
That made me think, remember those mood rings that you'd buy? They were like cheap little.
Yeah, those were cool.
No, they were cool, but they didn't really they were never accurate. But the next one, and I actually have heard of this, and I believe it does work to some degree. Molybdemancy, or basically molten metal divination. It was recorded in the ancient Greek and Roman empires. It spread to Germany and the Nordic countries by way of imperial invasion. And easily melted metal such as lead or tin is liquefied over a fire before being poured into cold water. The metal instantly hardens into bizarre shapes, which are then interpreted. It's still a New Year's tradition in Finland, where each family member is given a small piece of tin in the shape of a horseshoe to melt down. The melted and cooled pieces are held to a candle flame, and the shadows they cast suggest things that will happen to their owners in the coming year.
That's that's interesting. That's almost like tea leaf reading, right? Where you drink the tea and the leaves at the bottom are doing whatever shapes, and people.
I was gonna say we haven't even touched on the tea reading yet. That freaking Harry Potter stuff,
right?
You got the black dog, Hetty. But okay, this last one is the one I'm looking forward to the most because it's just the most outrageous. Tell me if you can guess what this is. Scatomancy.
Poo.
Yes, it's divination by poop.
Jeez.
Seers and magic users from several ancient cultures were known to tell a person's fortune by the look of their excrement. The Egyptians took scatomancy a step further by studying not only the feces, but also the behavior of dung beetles, which rolled the stuff into balls as part of their mating display. Speed and movement of the beetles, as well as the marks left by the rolling, were all taken into account for the final prediction. Staring at poop to gain secret knowledge might sound like something only an ancient barbarian would do, but modern doctors still practice scatology, or the examination of a patient's stool samples to learn about their health. So, I mean, we are still technically doing that one.
Those
Medical
scarab
professionals.
rings from Egypt, like those are. Have you seen like on Antique Roadshow and that kind of stuff? Like those scarab rings, they're very, very common. Everybody was buried with them back then, but they're really cool. Like they really did take that to heart, so to speak. Those beetles.
Well, and what can I say? There's actually a lot more that weren't even on that list that are freaking strange. But
Jeremy, isn't there some kind of divination where you use almost like divining rods?
actually, okay, I think I have that one right here. Actually, I think that might be this one. I'm not sure if this is exactly what you mean, but occultomancy is performed by dropping between 7 to 20 metal or bone needles into a bowl of water or onto a flat surface covered in powder. The arrangement of the needles or the tracks they made in the powder would be read and interpreted. It was used by nomadic Romani people or gypsies. And it's known as sortilege, which means predicting the future based on the casting or throwing of token items.
Interesting.
So, I don't know if that's exactly what you meant, but it was kind of similar to what I think.
But there's also the dowsing rods, like what you use to find water, but you can use those to get yes or no answers too, right? That's it. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, Michael.
That's what I was thinking, but I don't know that to be true.
I mean, paranormal investigators use them to talk to spirits.
Oh.
So, I mean, they did when they did my house, at least. But they just basically pulled them out and tell a spirit to either push them together or pull them apart for yes or no. But
because the common things now, I mean, mirrors like scrying, right? So that's your, crystal balls, mirrors, anywhere where you're kind of doing vision stuff, and then crystals. People use oh my gosh, people spend so much money on crystals. That's a big business.
It is. We have a bunch of crystal stores over here.
Yeah, it's big. And then the pendulums and the tarot cards, the Ouija boards, people with flames, just like a candle, scrying with a candle.
Okay. I actually just went past that one, but we could dive into that one. Daphnomancy.
Is that what it is?
It was an ancient Roman thing. It was the practice of tossing laurel leaves onto a fire and interpreting the sound of the burning leaves as well as the fire's brightness. If the crackling of the leaves was loud, it was a good omen. However, if there was only silence, the outlook was bleak. And same basic principles for the brightness, with a hot or brighter flame meaning more positive future. It's named after the Greek nymph Daphne, who was turned into the first laurel tree when she ran away from Apollo. God love Greek mythology. It's so nice to women. But I mean, I don't know how much I believe in that one. But here's one from Michael, actually, because it became something he loves. Gyromancy.
Okay.
It's basically a giant circle that's drawn on the ground, made up of all letters in the alphabet and other arcane symbols, and then having a person or group of people walk or spin around inside the circle until they got dizzy and fell over or stumbled and stepped out of the circle. The letters they touched or accidentally fell on would be recorded and read to determine the future. There's two other forms of it that were used similarly. One was that people spin around in frenzied circles or dance wildly until mentally exhausted and then interpret their delusional utterances. The other would be to draw a much smaller circle of letters and then spin a coin in the center of the circle, recording which letters the coin touched while spinning. And they basically became the modern Ouija board.
That's interesting because are you familiar with how the Ouija board got its name?
No.
I've heard it, but it's been a while.
Yeah, so the inventors of the Ouija board, a guy named Elijah Bond and Charles Kennard, sat down to use the Ouija board and asked the Ouija board, "What shall it be called?" And the answer was OUIJA. So the board identified it. Yeah, the board spelled out its own name.
Cool.
It's weird, right?
That's cool.
Like I said, who moves the planchette?
Well, you'll have to get one because it is interesting feeling, but I think you're channeling when you're doing that. But no, that's interesting.
Well, this next one is, I love this next one. It's called sternomancy. It's like anthropomancy a little bit, but which is the one that Rizzi trails. But this one also requires taking someone's life to really make it work. From the Greek word sternon, meaning breastbone, omens would be interpreted based on the size, shape, and coloration of the breastbone of a corpse. Fortunes could also be told based on the color and sound the bone made when placed in the fire. The current day tradition of cracking a wishbone for luck is a modern remnant of this form of divination. Another form of sternomancy, and this is where it gets good, which was far less gruesome, didn't use the breastbone for divination, but rather women's actual breast. It's believed that through sternomancy, the personality and character of a woman can be determined simply by the size and shape of her breast, as well as the color and shape of her nipples.
Okay.
So which one do you want?
Where's Scott when I need him for this episode? He would have been having a field day when he heard that.
I do find it interesting though that about the wishbone. Like it's always interesting to hear where our little things we do come from. Like where that actually those I don't know, folklore kind of traditions that we do. It's always interesting where they're rooted from.
But this is what gets me. That second form of sternomancy wouldn't work this day and age because women tan. So the color would be changed.
Well, and some are not even all their actual body. A lot of them.
True.
So shape and size, like, I mean, yeah, we've ruined it all now. So you can't do that anymore. Sorry.
Damn, I was going to open a damn shop, Deborah.
Yeah.
See how long it would last if I would open a damn shop. All right.
Funny.
This next one's gross. It's called pteromancy, and it's based on the mold that grows on cheese.
Oh, jeez.
It's the shape of the mold, its color, and the number of holes it created were all taken into consideration used to determine someone's fate in regard to love, money, and the end of a life. It reached very high popularity in the Middle Ages and was used by everyone from professional prognosticators to the average layperson. A common version of it involved writing different possible answers to a question on pieces of cheese, and the piece that grows mold soonest indicates your answer. So basically, whatever you want to win, just write it on the thinnest piece of cheese because that's the mold fastest.
I guess, but damn, groceries are expensive right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree. But all right, we got one more, and then that's the last of the weird shit. But zygomancy, it's a form of divination that uses metal weights as well as scales to predict the future and determine guilt or innocence. A form of this in ancient times would be using a set of scales to weigh a person suspected of a crime against a large Bible, which was also a form of bibliomancy originally. It was widely used by Greeks and Romans. A number of different cultures around the world use various forms of it. The Scandinavian culture, known as the Lapps, for example, have a sacred rock that represents their god. If they picked up the rock and it felt abnormally heavy, that would mean their god was angry. If it felt especially light, their god was happy. How does a rock change weight? I don't get that. But similarly, there was a West African tradition in which a woman looking to get pregnant would try to lift an iron hammer. If she could easily raise it, it would be a good omen for her pregnancy. If she could not, it meant she would not be able to have a child yet.
God, you want to be lifting weights then? Nice and soon.
That sounds like the test to see if you're worthy of being Thor for getting pregnant.
It's insane.
Can you pick up the hammer? Well, that's all I got for this fun.
Jeremy, you're breaking my heart. You missed my favorite. You missed the 8 ball that you shake, when you ask the question and it's...
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Deborah, I actually skipped over the beginning of that one because I thought it was too plain. But
No.
it's interesting, actually. And it's not an 8 ball, though. I'll tell you that much. I got to find it, though. What is it?
Magic 8 ball. Guide your life with it. Answers everything.
Well, Deborah, this is where it got started. It was called Philorhodomancy. It employed the use of rose petals or leaves off a rose bush, which were used to tell the future and more to answer yes or no questions. Similar to how people they use the magic 8 ball. Practitioners of this would take the petal or leaf between the tips of their fingers and ask a question, typically out loud. Then they would slap the petal or leaf on the palm of the other hand. If it made a clear, crisp sound, it meant yes, whereas a muffled or quiet slap would be a no. It derives its name from the Greek word pholon, meaning leaf, and rhodon, meaning rose. Another version involved cutting 3 roses at the stem, as you would do for a bouquet, and placing them in a vase of water, assigning 1 rose to mean yes, 1 to mean no, and 1 to mean maybe. Whichever rose lasted the longest would be the answer.
See?
So that's the beginning of your 8 ball, of your magic 8 ball. You shake right there.
Why are you sighing, Michael? What's wrong with you? Magic 8 ball.
Just not the magic 8 ball, but it just seems like a history of innocent people being blamed for crap that they were not responsible for.
It would be terrifying back then, especially when
it's so arbitrary.
Like saying if you're guilty or not. Like it'd be so scary. Wow.
And it doesn't seem like yeah. Go ahead.
If Scott was here, I gotta do this for him. If Scott was here, he'd be saying, "That's not the kind of 8 ball I use. That's magic."
Yeah.
Yeah. Indeed.
Carnival Scott, gotta love it.
Yeah.
But you were saying,
you were talking about one of these approaches, and it involved interpretation, of course, throwing the bones, looking at the scat, blah-de-de-blah. But I doubt if there was any kind of structured way of doing that analysis. It seems like it was purely arbitrary.
Well, I mean, that's also where dice come from. When they say when you're playing dice and they say throwing bones, like that's where it came from. That's what they used to do.
Yeah.
Like throw them bones. Like, I mean, it's just.
Well, I think the one thing that's really clear is people have always sort of had an inkling that there's, other dimensions and other, answers, and they're desperately seeking them. They're looking outside themselves for answers, a lot. Like you're saying, the people harassing the mediums when you're on your show and stuff, like people forever have been looking to get some answers from somewhere else.
Yeah.
I mean,
any way they can, even looking at poop, like that's crazy.
I mean, that's not looking at poop is not crazy though, because doctors still do it for medical reasons.
Well, that's for medical. Yeah, I guess, back then, maybe it mixed in, but also it could be like they would see color or whatever, and it would indicate a disease or whatever. That's all they knew. They didn't know that.
It doesn't matter where we are in time. If your poop's black, you're dying unless you get fixed. So if your poop's black, and that means blood. So, I mean, if they could tell that in ancient times, if your shit was dark and they said, oh, you have a bleak future ahead of you.
That actually that makes a lot of sense now that you say that, actually, that they would, perhaps not have the medical terms and knowledge, but they would just see a bleak future just because of a color or something. Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting.
I'm pretty sure if your bowel movements are any color besides what they're supposed to be, there's some kind of issue in your dietary. And it may not kill you right away, but it's going to eventually. I'm
pretty sure the boob one was just some pervert figured out.
The quagmire of ancient Rome, but yes.
Yeah. Huh. Well, which ones are you guys willing to try? Which ones are you interested in?
Well, I got chicken, so I can go kill one of them and let it run around.
No, don't do that. You can't do that.
Lunch.
Drink something different.
I wouldn't kill it. I would let my dog do it. They do it good anyway. And I'll let the dog grab it, and wherever it drops it, I'll draw a bunch of signs in the grass, and wherever the dog drops it, it's my future.
What, future barbecue? Like that's
Oh no! If they're in the dog's mouth, we never eat them anyway. If the dogs kill them, right, or if they die, it's because it could be they're either sick or we don't want the dog's nasty mouth going in our food. Like,
Yeah.
dogs do not have cleaner mouths than humans. That's a fucking myth.
I believe that.
Well, yeah. I mean, you think about what they chew on and eat and whatever. Yeah. They also have stronger acidic whatever in their saliva, so they can handle it, but we can't.
So, Michael, has your mind been changed at all about this subject?
Well, it's been super interesting, trying to divine meaning out of arbitrary coincidences. Like you said, there may be some glimmer of scientific background to some of it.
Mm.
Some of it may be just looking for a way to justify a preordained decision. We don't like that guy. Let's throw the bones and make sure he's the one that's for it. But
I like the bread one.
The bread one, you poison the bread to the person you don't like to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. It is so interesting.
And I mean, but a lot of these had historical significance too. I mean, battles lost because they didn't listen to this. I mean, yeah, it could be coincidence completely, but still. I mean, the Ides of March is a very famous thing in history, and if Julius Caesar listened to what they said, then he might still be alive. Like, all he had to do was not leave his bedroom that day.
So some of it, so here's devil's advocate with that though too. How much of it do you think is suggestion, like almost like a hypnotic suggestion to the person, and then they fulfill it because they were told the fate?
Well, I mean, the two historical examples, they didn't listen, and that's what fucked them.
Yeah, but maybe in the back of their mind, they were like, so you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I don't know.
or like I said, maybe both those instances were fixed points in fate where they had to happen.
It was going to happen anyways. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Julius Caesar dying seems like a fixed point, but
with the idea of fixed points, are you suggesting that time or history is circular, and these fixed points don't change, just like mark on the clock?
It's not circular, but basically, if this is the line of fate or time, you can have different strands shooting out in all directions and people change what they're doing. But there's always going to be certain strands that are there and are never going to change. Those strands, to put it in the Greek mythology way, those are the strands that turn gold that the fates can't cut. Those are the ones that are going to happen regardless, like Hercules becoming a god when he completed all his tasks and did what he had to do. Like that, stuff like that is determined. Like, it's not going to change no matter what you freaking do. I mean, you could say that for when you find your soulmate. That's a fixed strand that's not going to change for a lot of people because it's meant to happen at some point in your life. It might move down the line or up the line, but it's not going to ever break. It's always going to be there in the attached. While other ones, like you could have the chance to win the lottery here, but nope, you didn't make the right decision, so snap, it's gone. Like,
or
interesting.
Or also, like, so it's interesting because I was just thinking about the lotteries, because look at how many people win the lottery, and in a year they're flat broke because it wasn't really their destiny to kind of be rich like that. Like, they blow it away anyways because they're not prepared for it.
Or the people who win the lottery and they don't even check their numbers and don't realize they won until like a year later. Then it's like,
that'd be me. I never check I always forget. How sad would that be?
I don't play the lottery. I don't like the odds. And I don't have money to waste. I don't have money to waste on it. So, I mean, I will buy a scratch. I used to buy a scratch ticket here or there, and my theory always was, if I win on it, I will go buy the exact same scratch ticket again. Yeah. And then I will keep doing that until I lose. And sometimes I'd be up a couple $100 by the time I lost, or sometimes I'd be out a couple $100 by the time I lost. Like, I mean, because you're not making as much as you're spending at in some of them, but it's just the way it goes. And I would always let fate decide it, because I would just keep buying the same one over and over again, because maybe eventually I'd hit that $1,000 a week one, which I really wanted.
Yeah,
$1,000 a week for the rest of your life. That sounds perfect.
Yeah, but you have to have just light energy about the lotteries and whatever, because there's so much energy, crazy energy around it. So
I mean, and that's when manifestation comes into it too, because you can manifest certain things, but if fate's this line, are you just manifesting what you were going to have already, but you're just getting it sooner, or you're making it happen when you want it to happen because you're trying to manifest it?
I feel like we have a lot of control over our fate, but you have to be energetically ready for it. Because it's one thing to like be like, yeah, I'm ready to have money. I'm calling it to me, and I'm so grateful for it coming. You're saying all these things, but if you haven't actually dealt with the blocks that are like in your body, in your system, in your programming, it's not going to work. So you have to do a whole bunch of work before you can ever like change the direction.
It's like that. It's like the money jar I have. There are nights I shake it and I feel like I could feel like the energy in me, and I'm just like, I'm going to have a sale at work tomorrow. I'm going to have a sale at work tomorrow because I could feel it. And then there are the nights where I'm really tired, and I shake it a couple times half-heartedly, and like nothing happens the next day, and I don't expect it to half the time because I know I didn't really put my full spirit into it at that point. I was just half-heartedly doing it just to do it. So I mean, it's the way it goes. I mean, it's just.
All I know is the world is so much cooler and more interesting than you even realized before. Like when you start looking into all this stuff, it's just fascinating. It is fascinating that the governments and the armies and everywhere, like they've been doing this for a long time. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of craziness to it and a lot of funny stuff, but then there's a lot of practical uses too if you figure out how to do it. It's very interesting.
I mean, but you're right about the energy thing, because I mean, if you can get your dream job and you go into the interview when you're full of energy and you say, I have this, and you manifest that you're going to get the job, you'll get it. Attitude is everything in those things. And if you go in like doubting yourself or thinking you're not going to get it, you're not going to get it, because they're not going to see what you see. They're just going to see you as someone who seems to have negative energy about them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, unless your qualifications are that damn good, I mean, you're not going to get it.
So, Deborah,
mm-hmm.
I astral project to the Vatican Library, and I get through the security guards, but the drawers containing the information I want, the old documents that were stolen from the Incas and the Mayans, are locked. Can I still see them?
I think so. And like, believe me,
Wouldn't I have to open the book to read it?
But so again, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but
no, I get it. I'm just wondering if we were surrounded by people astral projecting, looking at our things. I guess it could be maybe why there are things moving in people's houses and they say they have ghosts, but you would expect to see a lot more things moving around somewhere like the Vatican Library.
Well, put it this way, though. I think
the physical things like move, though. I think you can move it like energetically, whatever, but I don't know that you're picking up the book and it's floating across to the library table and then flipping pages,
If you ever seen,
it's an expert, so.
If you ever seen in like in a comic book or in a movie how Doctor Strange like reads spell books like energy wise instead of actually physical wise.
Okay.
Like it's kind of like that. It's like a projection almost above the actual book of the book, and you can open it to whatever page you want. But I mean, the Vatican itself is going to have defenses against this type of stuff. They're the Vatican. They've had people that know how to astral project for thousands of years. Like they're masters of it. Like I'm sure they have defenses for any kind of physical, mental, or spiritual like invasion. I'm sure they have all the defenses they need for all those.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I'm just wondering if I have the wherewithal to actually project, do I need to be in the physical presence of the artifact that I wish to examine? I'm sorry?
I was going to say, so that's where like remote viewing, I don't know so much about astral projecting, but remote viewing, you can, so for example, what we were doing was they would have photographs and they were sealed and they would just give us numbers, not even like it was a number. So, and then you're just focusing on that, and then you're drawing what's in the photo in the sealed envelope that they have. So it's not like you picture yourself opening an envelope or anything. You're seeing the photo or whatever. You're seeing that thing of that place. You're actually at that place viewing it at that time. They give you a specific time and stuff. So, but I am learning all this stuff myself too. Like some people are just flipping amazing at this. I was just watching this guy was speaking, and there was, I can't remember what the lady's name was, but she would spend time, and she was actually projecting. She was leaving her body and she was out in space or whatever. And they were like, whatever. So as a test, they were like, well, read the serial. There's some space equipment or whatever. And they were like, read the serial number on that piece of equipment. And she did. And they're like, holy crap. Okay. So then she got hired because she can actually go and look at pieces of equipment for them like that. So I mean, that's incredible.
That is really interesting.
And always like evidential stuff is so interesting to me, where you can prove over and over and over again that it's correct.
Which, I mean, if you listen to our episode we did on reincarnation almost a year ago, probably, I mean, a lot of the cases we provided in that one, like they're the reason I believe in reincarnation so hard, because it's just, there's so many stories that can't be, like, these people would not have known these things about their past lives. Like kids wouldn't have known things about their past lives at the age they were. It would, before Google, before computers, before internet, these kids knew things in the 70s about a previous life as a fighter pilot in World War II or World War I, whatever the hell that story is.
Yeah, it's so specific. Like, it was incredible. Yeah.
And they would meet like their past lives, like co-pilot, and they would be able to have a conversation with them and say things that only that person would have known in the past life. Yeah. So I mean, it's creepy. It's fucking creepy.
Interesting stuff. One thing we didn't talk about was automatic writing, because that's another divination, like where you kind of go into trance and, I don't know, it's like your hands are moving on their own and messages flying through.
Well, I had a channeler on my show who does that too. She's a scry. They're called scryers. She had, God damn, I can't remember her name now, but she's the Philadelphia medium. She basically has a multitude of angels that she communicates with, and she just writes down what they tell her to write down. And it doesn't always make sense, and sometimes she has to like just kind of like figure out what they're trying to say. Mm-hmm. But she did it for me on the show, and like I asked her about my podcast, because she wouldn't know what I had coming up with my podcast plan that I haven't announced yet. Nobody would. Mm-hmm. And some of the stuff she pulled out, I was like, whoa, are you spying on me? Like, what the fuck? Are you in my head? Like, I don't know how you know this. I haven't told anybody about that plan yet. So, I mean, it's creepy. It's all this stuff is so freaking creepy, because it's just like,
it's fascinating though.
It's fascinating, but your peace of mind is slowly disappearing with these things. Like when you start realizing they're real.
Another thing I found that, well, this isn't really divination, but I was watching this, I think it's Mike Mandel hypnosis thing, and he was talking about graphology, so people's handwriting and how accurate they can, the information they can figure out about a person just by their handwriting. It's like, that's interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, all this stuff is so interesting. I mean, I love hearing about this type of topic, and I mean, the closest I get on my show is past life people and tarot readers, but still, I mean, past life regressionists are freaking amazing people to talk to. Some of them have interesting stories. I mean, I literally had one who did a past life for a woman, and in her past life, she was burned as a witch in Salem.
Hmm.
Which, I mean, yeah, you could make that up, I guess, but I mean, I don't think the way she told it, I don't think she did make it up, because like she said, like she could feel the heat when she was like in reading that person's past life. At that moment, she could feel the heat from the fire.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, folks, unless Mike or Deborah have anything else, I think this episode has come to a natural end.
No, but it's really interesting. Yeah.
Really good.
And so nice to not hear birds aren't real and flat earth every 5 seconds.
No, Scott, we missed it. I miss birds aren't real.
If it flies, it lies. But we'll be back next Sunday, same time, different place, but same time. And we don't know what the topic will be yet. We might have a guest if that's next week, or we'll have to pick, or we'll have to have. I think Scott's starting to pick a topic anyway, but we'll have to see. Listeners, it'll be a surprise for you. That's even better. So
use a divination tool and figure out what we're doing next week. See if you're right.
Yep. There you go.
Don't tell that to Scott. He'll think he can do tarot.
All right, everybody. Well, it's been a slice.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
It's been great.
Divine your future, people.
You can find me on Facebook as Jeremy Bryant, or you can find me as Uncensored, Unapologetic, and Untamed UQ Podcast Collective Facebook group. You can find me on Twitter and the Instagram as @JugglerBastard, or should I say X now. And you can find me on TikTok as @JugglerBastard Podcast. You can also find me on YouTube as Paranormal the New Normal. And you can also find me streaming on YouTube as Blind Knowledge Network, because all knowledge is blind until they admit Bigfoot exists.